How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Dating with the Moldy. I'm your host, Keith the Molder. It's been a long time. It's been a couple months here. I appreciate your patience on waiting for these episodes. I apologize for being AFK, away from keyboard, away from the pod. It's unlike me. I know. To take long hiatuses from creative projects, very not like me. I understand, but just want to say I appreciate you waiting. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate you watching all the videos up until this point. I know I've kind of come off the camera and just mainly done audio stuff, but we're switching it up this time. We're having people are clamoring for the moneymaker. So what can I say? I have to give the people what they want. You know, hundreds were flooding the inbox, thousands even. So we got to give the people what they're asking for. And today they're asking for a little bit of The Incredibles, Disney Pixar, the collaboration that has endured for, decades now. Really some of the best films of my childhood, everyone else's childhood for sure. And today we're talking about The Incredibles, more specifically Bob and Helen, Mr. and Mrs. Incredible, and their relationship together. There's plenty we could talk about in terms of the children and the family and kind of the whole family dynamic, but it's not what we're doing. It's Dating with the Moldy. It's about romance. It's not about the family, although the family is an important part of the whole process. This is more about the marriage and things within the relationship that become strained, become strengthened, and it's something that I wanted to talk about today. I love The Incredibles. It's one of my favorite Disney movies. Maybe not the top Pixar movie, but it's one of the top. And I think there's a lot of good stuff that people, once they become married, can relate to. And I think that, especially with the job changes, that's something that I've personally experienced that I appreciate them showcasing in this movie. So I'll talk about that. We got a couple of signature themes we'll also talk about. We won't necessarily talk about the family stuff, but it'll be included here or there. But so excited to get back into it. Appreciate you waiting. Without further ado, I won't make you wait anymore. This is another edition of Dating with the Moldy.
Dating with your Moldy, dating with your Moldy. Listen up, learn some stuff. He's a food reporter, talking about love. He's a gift from the sky above. It's dating with your Moldy. Yeah, this is a real song.
All right, folks, we're talking about The Incredibles today, and as always, every single video, we're going to have a couple signature themes from the movie. So let's start out firstly with, also for the record, I'm doing this video style, so I'm going to be looking at the computer back to the camera. Not really sure how to do this, but this is the best way to do it. All right, so the relationship themes. We got number 1, intimacy versus isolation, and we'll get into that in a moment. Number 2, domestic tranquility. Number 3, new job equals new Bob. Number 4, cheating. Number 5, stronger together. And number 6, family support. So let's start firstly with intimacy versus isolation. This is a reference to Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. For those who don't know Erikson, he was a psychologist. And so he had a multitude of these different stages of life, of development, places you would be in. So let's start with the first one. From infancy to 18 months is trust versus mistrust. 18 months to 3 years old, autonomy versus shame and doubt. 3 to 5 years old, initiative versus guilt. 5 years old to 13 years old, so elementary to middle school, industry versus inferiority. Then 13 to 21, adolescence, identity versus role confusion. Then from 21 to 39, which is basically like early adulthood, intimacy versus isolation, which we're talking about right now. 40 to 65 is generativity versus stagnation, and 65 and older is ego integrity versus despair. So everyone, at least according to Erikson, goes through these different stages of life where you have different experiences and thoughts and views on the world. So, for example, with identity versus role confusion, a lot of kids in high school and adolescence, they're trying to figure out, who am I? What is my identity? What is my role in the world? Who do I want to be? Who am I supposed to be? What does my family want me to be? A lot of different factors, a lot of different things up in the air that they're trying to figure out. So that would be, this different stage of development. So for intimacy versus isolation, this is the stage that is primarily concerned with wanting to be lonely, wanting to be by yourself, versus wanting to be close with someone, wanting to be intimate. It's not intimate in the sense that a lot of people think in terms of like sex and physical intimacy. It's more emotional intimacy, being close and trusting people and having close relationships, things like that. So this is kind of a main theme, in my opinion, of the movie, at least for Bob or Mr. Incredible. I'll be saying Bob for most of this video. So when I'm talking about Bob, it's Mr. Incredible. So according to the internet, intimacy is the ability to form deep, meaningful relationships based on trust and vulnerability, while isolation is the inability to form these connections, often resulting in feelings of loneliness and emotional withdrawal. This conflict is a key developmental stage in early adulthood, where individuals must balance forming close bonds with others while maintaining their sense of self. Successfully resolving this stage leads to healthy relationships, while failing to do so can result, as we mentioned, in isolation. So we see this at least in the early on points of the movie. And later on, in the end, I guess if you want to split hairs, we could say that theme number 5, Stronger Together, is the same as the first one. They're different, and I'll get into why, but we see this with Bob early. And we see it a little bit with Helen Parr, Mrs. Incredible, where, should it be Miss Incredible? I guess early on she was Elastigirl, but we see it early on. They two are very individual people. Elastigirl says, leave everything to the men. I don't think so, right? And they're both independent. They're both superheroes. They're both fighting crime. What does Batman do? Fight crime. And, so they're both doing their own thing. We see the theme, as I mentioned, the pretty predominant theme of the movie is Bob, Mr. Incredible. I say it all the time in therapy with some clients, but also just to my friends. The quote, "You don't have to be Superman," which I think there's a lot of pressure on men, let alone people, to be Superman, to be a superhero, to be a robot, to make no mistakes, to be the person that saves the day, that gets things done, that does things. What is it? Energy is the ability to do work, right? So people feel this pressure to do everything all the time, to have all the different facets of life, to work out, to make money, to have your social relationships good, all these different things. And that is definitely a pressure on Bob, and he feels that. And the thing for him is that he doesn't trust anyone to be there for him, so he does things alone. I don't need a partner, and that's why he rejects Buddy, or his nemesis in the movie, because he says, "I work alone," and he probably could have used a sidekick. Everyone needs a sidekick. He works with Lucius or Frozone, so I don't understand why he says, "I work alone," because clearly he doesn't. He has friends who he works with together. But to me, it feels like Bob is trying to keep people at an arm's distance. Maybe it stems from childhood. I don't know. I'm not sure. We don't really get that deep. It is a children's movie after all. But I would venture to say that maybe he couldn't trust people early on in his life. Something might have happened, or other relationships, or maybe one of his partners died. I don't know. I'm not really sure. But we see it where Elastigirl kind of challenges that early, where they're fighting, and clearly they've had a relationship, because she's like flirting with him and touching him and all that. And he says, "Oh, I work alone," and she says, "Well, I think you need to be more flexible." Point is, then we see the scene where they're getting married the same day that he's working. There's not a ton of people there, as you can see. It's a lot of you see a lot of fellow superheroes. Let me play this real quick. Okay, see, like basically it's Edna, a ton of superheroes, Lucius, who's his best man, I guess, and then the government guy, I think his name is Ray or something like that. But you see all these other people. You don't see any family. There's no family there, and so that leads to the question of these people's families. Like, maybe they had a tragic backstory. Maybe their parents were also superheroes and died. But it's clear that they're pretty alone in this world because there's hardly anybody there. And so for Elastigirl, she kind of, she's fiery. We love her personality. She really calls out Bob and says, "Listen, like, if we're gonna make this work, we need to work as a team. Is that something you can do?" And he says, "I do." And so they make it work. You flash forward 15 years, and Bob is forced to retire. And this kind of goes into our second theme, which domestic tranquility, right? And so he's now working and caring for his family by working this really crappy insurance job. Let's talk first about the first theme, and then we'll get back to everything else. But I really appreciated what Helen says in making sure, like, hey, like, you need to let someone in. And so I think for Bob, he's having that kind of challenge of not losing himself in his relationship, but also wanting to be in love. And that's, I think, something that we can all relate to. For some reason I want to talk about attachment or whatever, but it's like always, people who are avoidantly attached, who avoid intimacy, they want to remain detached because it's so much easier to not depend on anyone and just depend on yourself, to be alone, to work alone. But the reason why Helen says what she says is because it's true. Like, you have to be able to let someone in at some time. And so she said, if this is going to work, you need to let me in. You need to not avoid intimacy, basically. So you can see that with Bob. He's on the fence. And so, anyways, I appreciated that little tidbit earlier on because it comes out later in the movie. Anyway, flash forward. It's unfortunate, but CEO, like, Mr. Incredible gets sued and all this stuff happens that forces him, basically takes like a government deal and in the witness protection program or whatever, and now he's working this crappy job. And so basically the first part of the movie is a lot of, I put domestic tranquility or lack thereof because it's just classic parenting stuff. You see the son getting into trouble at school, putting a tack on the teacher's, chair and getting in trouble. Then you see them having a fight at the dinner table because the son is poking, Violet, the daughter, like, oh, Toby Henderson or whatever. And so, again, it's classic family dynamics, siblings fighting each other. These are things that happen. And so this is what I wanted to pull up mainly because we see that as much as I mentioned, I'm not going to delve super into the family dynamics, but when you're married and you have children, that becomes part of the relationship. As much as you would love to say, oh, well, there's, your mother and I, and then there's you guys. Like, it's all intertwined. You're all having relationships with each other. It's all a unit. So that's the thing. That's what changes. And I know, people who are married don't need to be told that. But it makes it all the more difficult and all the more important to, figure it out, I guess, and to be supportive of one another in their new role as mother or mother or father. So anyway, what I found most interesting about these kind of interactions, there was some good stuff and some bad stuff. Firstly, I mean, Helen really is an incredible woman. But right now. She is awesome as a mother because she's very patient and she's a clear communicator. We see that throughout the film. You see some conflict happening, whether that's between her and individually and her children or their children together, and she still remains calm. You see Violet when she's, struggling, like, or she's, like sad, and she's like, I'm not hungry, and a parent could have dismissed it and been like, all right, well, then you're not eating, something like that, right? But she goes, oh, okay, like, hey, let's, it's leftover night, like, what are you in the mood for? Let's find something. Let's collaborate together. So I appreciated that she was encouraging, motivating, and inviting Violet into the process rather than, being mean and be like, you're going to eat this and you're going to like it. I appreciated that from her. Now, what wasn't so ideal was Bob being emotionally checked out. He's not there, right? The lights are on, nobody's home. He's in the room, but he's not there with everyone. And so that's the issue we see for a large portion before he gets the new job assignment, right? Like, he's checked out. And we'll get into that with the whole new job thing. But we see this a lot. I mean, why do a lot of marriages fail? It's because the years go by and people don't stop to change. They let habits go on. They create new unhealthy cycles. And they never stop and say, hold on, is this working? Do we need to change things? And that's what we kind of see with Bob. I mean, Bob is 15 years later, he's at the end of his rope, essentially, and he's checked out. I mean, if he's a good father, he's there and present for his children instead of like, oh yeah, okay. Like he's cutting the steak and like isn't even listening and cuts through the plate. Or Helen says, hey, like, your son got in trouble at school today. Let's talk about that. And he's like, yeah. Like, not listening. He's not present. He's not there. Because he can't handle it. He can't handle being at a bad job, sacrificing the life he once had for, he can't handle it. And then he comes home and there's even more stuff. So, and that's the issue. Really, it's impossible. It's really difficult to be a perfect parent. So, I don't blame him, but, yeah, I wish that he would have been a little bit more present or even to have the foresight to say, hey, Helen, like, I had a really tough day at work today. Do you mind if you, me, and Dash talk about this after dinner? Or like, set aside some time to talk about it. You don't need to talk about everything at the dinner table. If you need a break after work, you're allowed to ask for that, but you got to communicate, and Bob doesn't do that in this moment. So you wish you would have communicated with her, like, hey, honey, I'm really stressed out right now. Do you mind if we talk about this after dinner? That would have been good. I mean, I assume at the time, like, people have dinner like 6 o'clock. Like, let's say it takes an hour, 7 o'clock, bam, let's talk about things. Because, yeah, I mean, you see him, have a bad day, then he breaks his car, right? Oh, he's sitting in traffic. Then he breaks the car, like, window, and he says, like, oh, another thing to fix, right? And she says, what? And he says nothing, right? Because he doesn't want to get in trouble or whatever. Sorry, I know I'm all over the place with this. So I appreciate your patience. But yeah, and so then you see him, like, trying to read the paper, and he's in the kitchen, and they start, the kids start fighting, and Helen has to, like, beg him, Bob, intervene. I need you here. I need your help. And he's, again, not present, not really listening, not intervening. And finally does, and he just lifts up the table, because that's the best conflict resolution he can come up with. And then Lucius comes and kind of staves off, and then Lucius comes for bowling night, which we'll get into in a moment. But yeah, it's unfortunate, because then you see Helen have to deal with, I won't call it the emotional fallout, but you see, like, she's having to deal with her kids' emotions, which I don't think is fully fair on her. Bob should have been there to talk to Dash about him getting in trouble at school, and should have been there to talk to Violet about this problem that they all have, which is we're superheroes, we have these powers, and we can't be ourselves, essentially. So, and then, as is for a lot of households, the emotional burden falls on the mother, and that's not fair. It should be an equal partnership, equal, distribution of emotional labor, but it doesn't happen. It's unfortunate. So anyway, again, shout out to Helen for taking on that, and the kids are completely valid for expressing their concerns of like, we're not normal. We don't know what to do with this. We're asked to pretend like we don't have powers when we do, and it's super frustrating. We don't know how to be normal kids, and they didn't ask for this, right? They didn't ask to be born with these things, but this is who they are. So, and Helen's right. They're both valid. That's the issue. They're both valid. So it's like, how do we come to a middle ground here? Anyway, I digress. But domestic tranquility. Definitely something that needs to be worked on in that moment of the film. Bob needs to be a little bit more present, or just a little bit more communicative of where he's at. I digress. So, new job equals new Bob. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the whole thing. So we see Bob and Lucius go and they like save the burning building, but then they get caught in the jewelry store and they think they're thieves. When in reality they were just saving people from a fire. And then, you see Lucius almost trying to talk Bob out of this. Like, it is clear, there's no denial that Bob lives in the past. He wants to be a superhero again. He wants to be the guy that saves people. He's a very selfless guy. Yeah, I'm sure part of it's an ego thing. I wrote this down, I'm like, why is he not a firefighter or a cop? Like, I don't understand. Maybe that's just too blatantly obvious that he was a former superhero or something like that, but I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. There should have been, or like in the army or something, I don't know. I just feel like there was a better solution than, he's working in insurance, but I digress. Anyway. We see this with him lying about bowling. So he's been living this lie for a long time with him and Lucius, where they're going bowling, but in reality they're saving people, which is a hilarious thing. Like, yeah, he shouldn't like lie to his wife, but he's also lying about saving people. So is it really that bad? I don't know. The point is, like, and this stuff also happens in marriages too, in relationships, where you don't want to get in trouble because as they know, this is the situation. They're in witness protection, essentially, and they have to keep the cover. And Bob, by doing this, is blowing cover. He's putting their family in jeopardy. And clearly, as they talked about, this isn't the first time. So, yes, Bob's want to save people, to be selfless, to be who he is, which is a superhero with superpowers, it's all good. But you have the other side of the argument, which is that your decisions are putting our family in jeopardy, and that's not fair. That's not fair to Helen. It's not fair to the kids. So I get it, Bob. I get it. I understand. We've all been there where we've had to make sacrifices, but this is something you got to work through, however that may be, because your family is more important right now. And if you're getting fired because you're throwing your boss through the wall, you got to work some stuff out, right? Helen, as you said, very valid. I've come to terms with it. Why can't you? So, at any rate, not great that he lies to his wife about bowling and then gets caught and lies about it again. And obviously, again, like, the thing about men is that women are smart. Women are very smart. They're very intuitive. They know what is going on. You want to think as if like, oh, we're good at hiding shit now. Women are always going to find out. So that's what you see, the classic like, I've been expecting you, like, sort of thing, and that's exactly what happens. Helen is at home and is like, wow, went to bowling, did you? And then finds the piece of rubble on his jacket. So, again, not a great thing. I know the lie was to do something good, but when you lie once in a marriage, it can lead to other lies. That breaks trust. He broke trust by going and not doing what he said he was doing. He wasn't cheating, but he lied, and that's not good in a marriage. You need to be able to trust each other and tell the truth. So, at any rate, we see them get in an argument, and he tries to downplay it, like, "Oh, it's just a workout, it's not a big deal." And Helen's being very patient at first, and Bob's kind of blowing her off, which I don't think is fair. He's getting frustrated. And he has some valid points, like, I don't want to pretend anymore. And that's fair too, but she sacrificed, he's not, and she's upset, and rightfully so. Then he's talking about, oh, I don't want to be there for the sixth grade promotion or whatever they called. He's like, I don't want to, celebrate mediocrity or whatever. So they're having a fight. I wish their conflict was a little bit more measured, and that's the whole thing. That's why I said you can't have things go on in these cycles. You got to be able to check each other, not every day, but every so often, at a good pace. Where, this conflict, right? Like, she's raising her head and he's yelling. You should be able to talk about things more regulatedly. You should be able to be talking about things a lot more calm manner. So, but why does it get here? Because clearly Bob has been sneaking out, lying for a while. There's no denial about that. He also has been harboring these feelings of being upset that his son has to change himself. He can't compete in sports. He wants his son to be great because his son is capable of good things, right? She also makes a good point of, well, he can't. So they should have had at a different time, not at 12 p.m. at night, or 12 a.m., 11:59 p.m. at night, where they're yelling at each other. Because, that's the thing. And the kids heard, because kids hear everything. I've been there, we've all been there, where we hear our parents fighting, and they want to pretend like, oh, they're asleep, they don't hear anything, but we hear everything. So they come out or whatever, and I do appreciate this post-fight conversation they have, where they say, hey, we're all on the same team, we're having a discussion, blah, 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 blah. You can see Helen's mad. And she's like, hey, everybody go to bed, and pushes his arm off of her, which signals she's upset. Which, good for her, she has a right to be upset. Anyway, but yeah, you wish they would have had that conversation earlier. And knowing Helen, she probably did. She probably brought it up to him like, hey, I don't want you doing this anymore. So yeah, Bob's got to be better, bottom line. Anyway, I digress. Flash forward, theme number 3, which is new job, new Bob. So we see him get this offer from, a silver-haired woman to do this new job. And again, lies about what he's doing to his wife because he knows that he'll get in trouble. Then the message blows up, and fire sprinklers go off. And this is a scene that I really do appreciate, because you see Bob and Helen drying off all the books together. God, Helen really is an incredible woman. You see her, this is post fight, right? I think it's the next day or whenever, and she comes up to him, puts her arm on him and says, hey, you're distracted. I can tell you've had a rough go about it. She's very soft, very calm, and is I appreciate you. Gives him a kiss. I really appreciate how she starts that. Then it kind of not all crumbles, but then he says, "Oh, something happened at the job," and she goes, "What? What? Something happened?" And you could see her tone is getting a little pissed, which is not super loving as she once was, like 2 seconds ago. Which you would have hoped she would have maintained, like, "Hey, like, what happened? Tell me." And then he lies and says, "I'm going on a work trip," because again, people don't lie because they want to be. Sorry, let me reframe this. Most people don't lie because they want to be deceptive. Most people lie because they're afraid of conflict. They don't want to deal like Bob. Bob lies because he doesn't want to deal with the conflict of telling the truth, of saying, "Hey, like, I got this job offer to go to this remote island, and I got to be Mr. Incredible again," and blah blah blah. Because it's going to lead to a fight. She'll say, "Hell no, you're not doing this," and then whatever. So I get it. I get why people do it, but we should all aim to live honestly, to speak honestly. Because instead, he goes and lies again, doing this thing behind her back, lying about it. And so we see that where he goes to this island with the beautiful, gorgeous, silver-haired woman and has dinner with her. Whatever you want to claim, I think there's some flirting going on. "Oh, I'm attracted to powerful men, blah, 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 blah." And then he's like, "Well, yeah. Borderline. I don't think he would have said, look at my pinky. That's kind of crazy. I don't think he would have acted that way if his wife was there. So, whatever you want to say. I think that's why I put cheating in quotes. These two themes are kind of entangled into one. But I guess firstly I want to discuss about how the new job changes Bob. Bob becomes a better version of himself, right? So, we were kind of mentioning it earlier. This, what the hell? Sorry. When people are happy, they're better partners. And so we see Bob, because he's happy, because he's doing a job he loves, because he's, and then you see it also right here. He goes and he's playing with his son in the park, and his son is allowed to showcase his speed, right? He's working out with trains and shit. And I don't know. It's like when football players get injured and they can't play football anymore, or they get cut from the team. Or, pro football players, they stop playing, right? They always say that joke. You can take the football player off the football field. It's like that phrase. Like, you can take the blank out of the blank, but you can't take, whatever. You can't take the blank out of the blank. And it's the same thing. Like, Mr. Incredible is a superhero. Bob is a superhero. You can't pretend like he's not. And so when he finally does become back a superhero, he's incredibly happy. He is more present in his relationships with his son, his daughter, his other son, Jack, and in his relationship with Helen. And so it puts a smile on your face. It's the montage, of course. And it's amazing. And it underscores the fact that, like, when you're happy in yourself, you will be happy in your relationship. And it also, again, like I said, underscores how important jobs are and job satisfaction. You're doing a career that you love, you're going to feel fulfilled in your life. And so I think that's why it's so important that the change happened. Not that I agree with him putting his family at risk, but I think that it just illustrates the point that, like, if a person's working a job they hate, they're going to be miserable, and it's not going to be good for anyone, because it's just a domino effect, right? A spiral, a snowball, whatever you want to say. That when you are unhappy, it's going to trickle down in everything else. Anyway, so it's great to see that Bob is more affectionate, he's more loving, seems like a better lover, with his wife, like they're making out and stuff and whatever. Unfortunately, it's all predicated on a lie, but there is something nice about it. Even if he's lying, he's a better man. And the other thing, too, you can tell he's confident now. Before, he was overweight, he was working a job he hated, he wasn't feeling confident, and now you see him as a superhero, He feels like the man again. And when you're the man, anything's possible, right? So theme number 4, as I mentioned, is the whole cheating thing. Kind of goes back to earlier point about women are so intuitive. They know everything. They notice everything. You cannot slip anything by a woman. And there's certain men that can do that too. But you see Helen notice the hair, right? That's a dead giveaway too, or like, the nails or the scent of the perfume, whatever it may be, where women notice these things. And so she notices the hair of like, oh, this is a woman's hair. Then you hear Bob on the phone, and she's like, let me listen in. I do not advocate for any sort of sneaky surveillance like Helen's doing. But, she saw the hair and was like, well, I'm gonna do this, right? She probably should have had a discussion about it with Bob. And said, hey, like, I noticed this hair. Where'd it come from? Or whatever. But instead, she listens in on his phone call and not confronts him, but like says, hey, what was that? And then he starts to lie out of his ass. And then he leaves, and so we can go to the job. She's then worried as hell. She makes that face, right? She's at the car, makes the face like, but she's scared that he's cheating on her. And which he's not, as far as we know. I don't think so. But he's lying to her. He's living the lie. And you could tell she's all meek and quiet, like, hey, like, I hope you have a good time. Because she's scared of him leaving. She doesn't want to upset him, and then he leaves for another woman, right? That's the whole thing. She's now afraid of conflict. Because she could bring it up like, hey, Bob, I heard you on the phone with this woman. You're lying to me. What the fuck? Apologies. But she doesn't, because she doesn't want to stir the pot and is unsure. Then, so he goes to the island. And then she also notices, too, the little stitching in his uniform, which is a dead giveaway of like, oh, he saw Edna. Again, women notice everything. So then she goes to Edna. She spills the beans of like, hey, you didn't know this? He's doing this new job on this remote island, whatever. Anyway, so then she, curiosity gets the better of her. Helen a little, I don't want to call her insecure, but she does what any caring wife would do and tries to find his location, which eventually gets him screwed and gets him captured. And then she's crying because she thinks he's cheating. And then she goes to rescue him. Then there's that weird moment. This is also in the cheating thing, where she goes to the island and Bob's like strangling that woman, and then they hug. They got a weird flirty energy going on. Like it's weird. It's weird. I think it's strange. I think he like crosses a little bit of a line with this woman that he's like hugging, and she's like, what would it be hugged by a man? And then she gets like punched in the face. And Bob's like, it's not like what it looks like. And then of course he just kisses her and everything's fine. But I also appreciate even when Helen saw him hugging this woman behind closed doors and they're running to try and like save the day, she's still communicating in a healthy way as they're running out. Anyway. That's theme number 4. I'm gonna recap everything here in a second, but what I love, obviously throughout the film, but especially in the forest, where it's they all come together, right? And it's the classic, the titular moment where they're all, it's all 4 of them, and they get ready like da-da-da-da-da, and they're ready to fight as a family. And so that goes into the 5th theme, which is stronger together. they all start fighting together, and they get captured, which sucks. But we see it in the ending sequence too, where they're all teaming up, and they're fighting together.
While what? I watch helplessly from the sidelines? I don't think so.
I'm asking you to wait with the kids.
And I'm telling you, not a chance. You're my husband, I'm with you. For better or worse.
I have to do this alone.
What is this to you? Playtime?
No.
So you can be Mr. Incredible again?
No!
Then what? What is it?
I'm not...
Not what?
I'm not strong enough.
Strong enough, and this will make you stronger?
Yes. No!
That's what this is? Some sort of workout?
I can't lose you again! I can't. Not again. I'm not strong enough.
If we work together, you won't have to be.
So the best part about the movie, the best line is the one you just heard right there. It gave me chills. It still gives me chills every time I hear it. Like, I can't lose you again. I'm not strong enough. So in the battle with Syndrome, with Buddy, the family's coming together. And Bob, Mr. Incredible, wants to, again, the callback to the beginning of the movie. I work alone. I don't work with a partner. I do everything by myself. We hear it again. I'm not, and he says, I can't lose you. I can't lose you again. I'm not strong enough. So he feels like, well, I can't lose you, so, I'm instead just going to do everything myself, and you'll lose me. Basically, which is not better. She says the great line, so he says, I can't do it, I'm just not strong enough. And she says the line, well, we don't have to if we work together. And so that's the theme. That's theme number 5. Stronger together, for a reason. The whole theme of this movie is you don't have to be Superman. We're better when we're together. You don't have to be alone. And I love that. I love that theme. I love that message that we see with their marriage. Is like, it's a callback to earlier. It's like, Bob, I'm here for you. Reach out. Reach out. Ask for me. I'm here to help you. And so he has a problem doing that because he feels like he needs to do everything himself and he can't ask for help. Classic man thing. And she offers it, says, hey, you won't have to be alone. I know you're afraid. When he says I'm not strong enough, that is such a vulnerable moment for a man that's literally a superhero, not supposed to show weakness, not supposed to be a guy who struggles. And so for him to say, I'm not strong enough, I need help, essentially, it was really great to see. A moment of growth for sure for him. And she says, we won't have to if we're together. Bam. And then he accepts her help and says, all right, let's do this. And then the whole family, they're working together. They're united, right? It brings a tear to the eye. It's a great thing to see, right? And we see at the end of the movie as well, where that, the grave digger or whatever that guy is comes out of the earth and they then team up. So I love that theme. It's awesome. Final theme, I guess, is how Bob and Helen are also great parents, very supportive. I don't know why I put family support in here. It's been a family support throughout the movie, but they're both really good parents. You see Dash at the track meet, and they're all there rooting him on, which is awesome. You love that. You love when parents are united to support their kids. They're there for them, and that's a bit of a change as well. Dad could have said, "Oh, it's just a stupid track meet. Who cares? He's in 5th grade, whatever." But he's there supporting his son, which is awesome. Anyway, rounding it out, looking back on all of it, looking back at all the different themes, I think if I were to do couples therapy with them, again, I probably would have intervened. I would have hoped that before Bob lost his job, there could have been an intervention then, where instead of him assaulting his boss and getting fired and putting all these different people in jeopardy, blah, 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 that they could have come to counseling or whatever, or he could have gotten therapy and just been like, hey, I'm really struggling with losing my identity as a superhero. What do I do? How do I make this work? I don't think their marriage was even that bad. I just think that like he needed to get his shit together, which he does. Worked out in the end. They needed to be superheroes again, working together. But we see a lot of growth from Bob to go where he's lying and where he's like withholding stuff to where, in wanting to work alone and isolating or whatever, to where he's accepting influence, right? We've talked about this before, the idea of like, listen to your partner. They have good things to say. And so he does. He works with her and they defeat Syndrome, and it's a great moment. So, overall, you wish that they had more. You wish that Bob had more open and honest communication, and same thing for Helen a little bit, right? Like she feels insecure. She notices that Bob's lying, doesn't really talk about it, and probably should have been addressed. Probably should have been communicated, but it wasn't, and so it leads to her taking drastic action by flying over there, almost getting her and her family killed. Probably not the most advisable thing to do, but she had to do it. Thankfully, everything worked out. I know it's just a movie, but ideally, the final points here is that what Bob went through early on, having his identity ripped away, his sole purpose in life to help others was ripped away from him. He can't help but help people, right? That was cool that he has such a big heart. But, he needed to rein it in a little bit, to do it in a safe way, do it in a way that helps his family. There's definitely jobs out there that he could have gotten where he felt fulfilled and had a purpose and helped people without sucking his soul. So I think that could have been something to be worked on is, hey, excuse me, how do we, make this work? How do we make sure that you're feeling, what's the word? I guess fulfilled and also keeping your family safe. Let's find that middle ground. Let's find that balance, right? That should have happened before he took drastic measures, right? I think he also shouldn't have lied about doing these things. I think he could have talked to Helen about his feelings, saying Helen, I feel bad. I feel like a failure. I don't have any purpose. It's really difficult for me to be at home right now. I think he should have done that instead of going out and lying and making her think that he's bowling when he's not. Because that's stuff that erodes trust in a relationship. And I didn't think he needed to go to that length to make it happen. I don't think he needed to do that. So I also think he kind of blurred some lines with that woman and getting a little chummy with her on occasion. So I think he could have been a little bit more disciplined in regards to that. I also think he could have been a little bit more present when it came to family interactions. I don't mean to shit on Bob the whole time, for the record. I think Helen probably, she did her best and maybe could have intervened a little earlier. And I didn't know exactly how long Bob had been at that new job, but feels like it was a pattern, and she might have. I don't know what the solution is there. But again, there's also a ton we don't know about this film. But anyway, that's all I got. But yeah, I appreciate this film. I think it does show healthy dynamics, especially from Helen. She just is such a good communicator. The way she talks about stuff, and I really am impressed by her ability to talk through things and be regulated and not lose her cool. So yeah, shout out. Anyway, that's all I got, folks. That's all I got. That's been a look at the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Incredible in the film The Incredibles. Appreciate you watching. We'll try and come out with these a little bit more often. But yeah, hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions, comments in the comment below. And yeah, that's all I got. But anyway, take it easy. We'll talk to you later.